John. In my usual videos, I'm out photographing landscapes, street photography, and taking you along for my adventures. Recently, a company named Dehancer, they reached out to me to make a review of some of their software. What Dehancer is, it's a plugin tool that can be used with both photo and video editing software. I have it loaded up here with Lightroom. It creates a film look, which is kind of cool. And just as a quick disclaimer, I'm not being paid to make this review. And I was quickly interested because they have a lot of presets for various films, some which I do shoot with or have shot with, and many which are films that are no longer made. So it's kind of fun to get to try them out, if you want to call it that. I enjoy shooting with film. I enjoy the process of going out with the film camera. But it's also having the idea of being able to emulate those films, seemed kind of intriguing to me. So to make a good review, I thought I would use actual film and go out and photograph side by side with my digital camera. Just photograph scenes and places I would normally photograph and do a side by side comparison with similar compositions, similar settings, and then to bring the images into Dehancer and see side by side film versus Dehancer to see how close it gets and how well it works. For the film itself, I had it developed and scanned by a local lab, and I brought them into Lightroom, and now I'm ready to do the comparison. So first things first, with Dehancer is when you're downloading it, it's available both for Windows and Mac. I'm running on a Mac. I just downloaded it, didn't pay attention how I was downloading it, and I went to install it and it wasn't working. So I went to follow the instructions and I realized that I downloaded the wrong Mac version. They make a version for Mac with Intel processors and M1 processors. After going through the instructions, I got it up and running and it worked flawlessly, so read the instructions. Okay, so here in Lightroom I have all the films that I used loaded up. CineStill 800, Portra 160, Portra 400, and then TMAX black and white 400. And I started off with CineStill 800, went to Chinatown in LA. If you're unfamiliar with CineStill, one characteristic of it is there's something called halation. So when there's lamps or neon lights, that kind of thing, there's this sort of haze or glow around it. That's a very strong characteristic of CineStill. Okay, so I have the CineStill files marked in red, and the Canon, they're just not colored. So let's isolate this first image real quick. Okay, we have, here's the Canon, and here's the CineStill. So as you can see right here, there's this, what is called halation, this red orb in various spots. And so that's a strong characteristic of CineStill. So with this first image, with the Canon, one tip that I saw before sending it into Dehancer is to bring down the contrast so you have sort of a flat image, or flatter image. So let's put it around 60. Okay, and then that's it. And then just go to Edit, Dehancer. So right away we're presented with all kinds of options here. You got your film presets on this side, and then tool effects and adjustments on that side. So starting off up in the left, there's different film types. So you can do color negative, color positive. These are just, it filters out the presets you have here. Then you can just hover over. No, you can't hover over. You just click each one as you want to see the preview, but then you have to, if you want to reset, you have to reset everything. Kind of wish there would be a hover over, sort of as in Lightroom, without having to apply an effect. So I just leave it as it is. And so with this image I photographed originally in CineStill 800T, and that's going to be our comparison. So right away, when you click it, this is what you get. Now let's do a side-by-side with the actual CineStill. Swing it over a little bit and then click here. So if you can just do a quick glance, you see the halation on the film scan. There's not really halation going on, so that's the quick giveaway that to me it's not there yet. But let's see what we can do. Okay, so over here on the side, we have different tools. I wish you could minimize this side, but anyway, let's try this out. So CineStill is a tungsten film. So when I photographed with the Canon or with my digital, I had it set to tungsten on the white balance. So see if we can change that to be a little more green, as in the original scan. So that to me looks a little more close. Let's see. Yeah, it's getting there. So the main characteristic that I was talking about CineStill is to get that halation. And conveniently they have a tool here named halation. So let's bring it in, turn it on. You get all kinds of options here. I'm not entirely sure what they all do, but let's, this local diffusion, it starts to create that effect, or to get that glow. And then the global, I guess it does it's just interesting. It says local, but when it says local and global, I'm not really sure what it's talking about. Local to me, when you're using Lightroom or Capture One, you have a brush or a pinpoint, you can mark a spot and it just affects that area. You can change the radius and where it's affecting it. And then global affects the whole picture at once. So I'm not sure how they define local versus global, but when you go up to here to mask mode, you can see an outline of things, and then you can see where it's affecting. But the tricky thing is with that is, how do you know where? I don't know how you direct it where to mask. There's nothing up here to say. I'm just leaving it not in mask mode so I can see the image. So we get our halation going on, and see if we can get it how we want it. So I kind of like that. Again, let's drag it over to see comparison. The reds aren't as red in the Canon image, but we get that sort of feel. What other controls do we have? Film grain. So that's another characteristic of film. If you're a pixel peeper where you like to zoom in 100% on an image and compare, sharpness of a lens or that kind of thing, when you compare film with digital, you'll start to see a difference even at low ISOs. On a digital image, it's much cleaner. There shouldn't be much, if any, grain or noise. But on film, even on lower ISOs, when you zoom in, you'll see grains, even if it's fine. And that's the characteristic of film, because you're filming, the actual film is made of grain. It's made of little tiny bits of silver. So let's add in just a little bit. So with CineStill 800, it's ISO 800, so it's got a fair amount of grain. So we can add in a little bit. I mean, this is just sort of, I don't know if you want to just eyeball it, but to give it a feel that you like. Anyway, let's go with that, hit OK. Here we go. And you can mark it. So let's bring it up with the, so this is the actual CineStill, and this is Dehancer. Let's see if we can change this crop to match a little. So, as a starting point, I think that's a great example of what Dehancer can do. So real quick, just using Dehancer for the first time, I'm expecting when you click on like CineStill, for example, as I just did, that it would give more of that film look, because having to apply all the settings after I click the preset, to me, it's hard to know, am I getting close to that preset or what CineStill should look like? Do I even know what CineStill looks like? if I didn't have the film comparison, would I know if I'm in the ballpark of what CineStill is supposed to be? For these next set of images, I went to San Diego to have a portrait session with my friend Molly. She's another photographer. Here's her Instagram. Do check her out. So the films I used are Portra 400 and TMAX 400 black and white. Both are Kodak. So as you can see here, the images with the green, those are shot with my Canon digital raw. Ones in purple, Portra 400, and the ones in gray are the black and white, obviously. So just as you can see, I used a flash with a softbox. Nice, more specular highlighting. With these images, with the softbox, it was creating a flare on the lens, so I have to increase the contrast. So gives you an idea of what you can do just with the scans. So it's not a perfect one-to-one, but taking this image, for example, let's see right here, and compare it to here. She's in the same lighting, but see how it's softer. Okay, let's bring the contrast down to 60 like we were saying. Let's see, keep things consistent. Let's bring it into Dehancer. Okay, so let's just go down to Portra 400. And right off the bat, it's got sort of a cool feel that I'm not sure why it does that, but it does have that soft sheen that I have in mind when I use Portra film. Now for me, when I click on Portra and it doesn't look like Portra, and it takes a lot of effort to create that Portra look, and even still I'm having trouble getting it to look like what I think Portra looks like, or what I know what Portra looks like. Suppose you've never shot with Portra, you've never shot with Fuji or film at all. You have other options. You don't have to apply Portra. You can see the thumbnails down below, and you can see, okay, this Provia, for example, Fujichrome Provia 100F, when I click on it, it looks closer to me to Portra than the Portra preset does. You can keep exploring, so you can hit reset, go back down. Let's see what other options we have. This Fuji Velvia, to me it looks closer. Just needs a little warmth and a boost in the exposure. And that to me is a quicker workaround, I guess, if you want to get that Portra look. It doesn't have to be Portra preset. You can find that what looks better for skin tones, what looks better for landscapes. Just use the previews. Now, let's say you do a whole portrait session like I did with Molly. There's 20 photos of this look. You can do batch editing like within Lightroom. You can select all those images, apply the changes that you want, and it affects all the images. With Dehancer, you don't get that option, but you have to go one by one per image. But one thing you can do is go up to presets, and you can create a preset, which I've already made one. You can say what you wanted to call it. I can say this is Molly session 1. So after you're done, you can bring in another image. And you can apply that preset. And it speeds up things a little bit, because if you want to have that consistent look across all the images, you create your own presets, which is kind of cool. Let's check out the black and white abilities. I'll try this close-up of Molly. Edit and Dehancer. Okay. There's not a lot of options yet, but Dehancer, they're always adding new profiles, so it's something to keep updating every once in a while. I'm noticing on some, they add this, there's this green tone to it. So let's say, for example, with this HP5 popular film, you notice this green to it. It doesn't do that when you photograph on black and white film. But one thing you can do is just come over to here, this saturation slider, and bring it down. So if you want to go up close, here's where black and white film I think is kind of fun when there is grain, because it can add character to it. And if you want to get too much, just to get the strength to get the idea, let's bring it back down. To me, when there's grain and shadows and it meets, you know, highlights, to me it's a nice. I just like the texture of it. Elation. I don't know if that works good with portraits, but let's give it a try. You can soften a little bit, so it doesn't have to be this like sharp, high contrast digital image where it's, you know, it's very sterile in some ways. Having a sort of haze creates a nice effect. You don't always have to use these. These are effects that can be applied at will, and you can lower it so it's not too much. I'd like to end this review on a closing thought of asking who's Dehancer for. If you're a film photographer and you enjoy shooting with different types of film, different types of cameras, Dehancer might not exactly be for you. But if you're a digital photographer and you like to do different looks for your images, I think Dehancer is a great tool to get outside of your creative box a little bit, to try different things. You get a whole new palette of presets. You get a whole new palette of creativity to work with. Another strength with Dehancer is if, let's say you do like the film looks, but you don't want to invest in film photography. That's because, let's be honest, it's an expensive side of photography. There's the cameras, there's buying the films. Let's say a photo shoot doesn't go right, where you get flare and it ruins the film, or the film gets exposed improperly, or whatever. There's all kinds of things that go wrong with it. So it can start to add up and actually be a frustrating avenue of creativity. Having the ability to get that look without investing in all this stuff, you know, it's a great avenue to go, because you if you mess up, it's a computer or it's digital, you just hit undo. With film, if it's ruined, you know, it's a lot more upkeep. You need to store negatives, you gotta scan it properly, you gotta do all kinds of things. And that's also maybe sort of the caveat why people get into film photography. They love the artistry. So if you'd like to try Dehancer, there's a link down below to get a trial. And if you want to buy it, there's also a code down below for 10% off. So it's a great way to save money. It's a fun program. I do recommend trying it. So I hope you enjoy it. I'll see you next time. Bye.